Hello, welcome back to lesson 2.4. Today, students are going to learn how to make and read box plots. Box plots are sometimes also called a box and whisker plot. They give a good graphical image of the concentration of the data. And there's particular pieces to a box plot. This is an example of one. You're going to see some already printed in your notes here. But this far left edge always represents your minimum value of the data. And the far right edge always represents the maximum of the data. And then these lines are just showing you that there's possible data in between. And then the left edge of the rectangle, so there's a rectangle in the middle, what we call the box. The left edge of that rectangle represents your Q1, which you learned about in a previous lesson, 2.3. And then the line on the inside, it's not always in the middle. It's going to be off center sometimes, depending on if your data is skewed or symmetric, which you're going to learn more about in lesson 2.5. So that line in the middle is always your median, also called your Q2. And then the line on the right-hand side of the box is your Q3, your 75th percentile. Okay, so you learned about these pieces called the 5-number summary back in lesson 2.3, but now we're going to put them together into a picture form. So I wanted to show you how you can make these. So in Desmos, you're going to click on the plus button to start a table. Then you're going to enter your data into X1, and then in the row underneath your data, you're going to type box plot and then X1 in parentheses. If your data is in a different row or column, then you're going to use the column that points to your data. Also, do not click the box to exclude the outliers. We do want to include those if there are any. You can also create a box plot in Google Sheets. There's a little more to it, and it's usually not worth doing it if you can type your data into Desmos. If you have an extremely large data set, it may be worth doing. On the notes online, you can just click on this link and it will take you to a YouTube video on how to make a box plot in Google Sheets. Okay, so we're going to look at example 1 here. It's going to be looking at the data on the number of pages in 40 books on a shelf. And so here are the number of pages in those 40 books. It says construct a box plot using Desmos for the following data set. So this is what it looks like in Desmos once you enter your data into X1. You're going to type box plot with X1 in parentheses, and then you don't have to worry about offsetting or height, but just make sure you don't check that box because we want to include the outliers if there are any. So this right here shows the box plot for the number of books on pages in 40 books on the shelf. And you can see that this is our minimum. There's always going to be numbers on a number line, so you can do some estimating if the various points don't fall directly on a data value. So you can do some estimating here. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces in between 200 and 300. So if you take the distance of 100 and divide by 5, each of those spaces is probably worth about 20. So it looks like the median here, that bar on the inside, is at about 320. I'm just going to write it by the values up here. The Q1 looks like it's at about 220, 240, so just under 240, so maybe 239. And the minimum looks like it's just below, so we got to subtract 220. So 180, subtract 20, 160, subtract 20, 140, just below that. So maybe 138. And then the Q3 looks like it's just below 400. So maybe 397, just guessing. And then the max looks like it's not quite to 520, so maybe 516. So let's check out our Desmos link. You should be able to click on that in Canvas. And here's our data that I've already entered for us. I'm going to turn off that box plot and turn this one on. And if your box plot seems to be scrunched up or too big, you can always go and adjust your box plot by clicking on the magnifying glass here where it says zoom fit up to the left. And I want to not exclude my outliers, and I don't have any, so I don't have to worry about that. So you can see here that it's the box plot that you just saw on my paper. And I would like to just kind of maybe verify the values that I guesstimated on. If you type stats, and then put X1, we learned this back in lesson 2.3, and see how good I guessed. So my guess was 138 and the minimum is 136. 237 is the Q1, I guess 239. The median is 322 and I guess 320. The Q3 is 395 and I guess 397. And the max is 512 and I guess 516. So we are just guesstimating, and that's okay. Also, if you haven't already noticed, I've got this down arrow here, and these are folders that you can create in Desmos that helps you organize your problems if you have multiple to turn in for an assignment. And you can find that by clicking on this plus button here. An expression is always the mathematical expression that you're typing. This is if you want to be able to use words to describe something. This is where we create a table. This is a folder, which is what I did here. And then you can also add an image if you want. But you can see that this little faint line here, that shows that I have put these command lines inside that folder. So you'll see I can do that down here too. This one here is not currently in the folder, but I can go and say box plot or X3, and then I will have to drag it in there. So if I just grab it and drag it, you can see that it now becomes part of that, that folder. Okay, let's look at example 2 in your papers. Example 2 says the following data set shows the heights in inches for the boys in a class of 40 students. And then we also have the next data set is the class of 40 students that are girls. And so I have those listed in X2 and Y2 here in the Desmos table. And I'm going to go up. I need to turn this off for us. So it's good to just, if you click on the purple circle here to the left of the box plot, it will turn it off on your screen so that it can adjust the scaling to fit the next data set. So I'm going to go here, and I did box plot of X2. That's the boys' heights. I'm going to turn that one on. And notice how it looks scrunched up. That's because I haven't adjusted with my magnifying glass. I'm going to do that now. So it says construct a box plot using Desmos for each data set and state which box plot has the wider spread for the middle 50%. Now remember, the middle 50% is your IQR. So here's the boys. It's the Q1 is at 68, the Q3 is at 72. And then I'm going to go here and hit enter and do a box plot for Y2 because that's where the girls' data is. And I'm going to let's see here. Turn on the, change the color. Okay. So you can change that by, notice I clicked on the gear up here and that allows me to change the color. So I could change these and make them red and green if we wanted. So the boys are in red and the girls are in green. And it's kind of hard to tell which one has the bigger middle 50%. And it looks like the girls is at 63 up to 68. And it looks like the boys, their middle 50% starts at 68 and goes to 72. So if you take 72 and subtract 68, that's the boys. And so it looks like the boys, I'm going to stop sharing. for a minute here and share my paper so you can see what I'm writing. So the boys' IQR is 4 and the girls is 5. So it looks like the girls have a little bit bigger middle 50% than the boys. Let's look at one more. This is an example of some data. It's not tied to anything in particular. And you can see that data set is in Desmos there. But I put it here in the notes so that we could actually make sure that we know how to find all the pieces on the big number summary here in the box plot. So it says, what is the minimum? And it looks like the minimum goes to 0 here. So that's 0. What is the Q1 value? And they're not falling right on the line, so we have to do some estimating. So it looks like it might be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And so this is 10, 20. So it looks like the Q1 is between the 10 and the 20. So I would estimate at 15. What is the median value? That is the bar on the inside, and that looks to be right at 50. What is the Q3? And that looks to fall right at this mark here, which is 10 away from 100, so 110. And then our IQR, we learned that back in a lesson ago, and that's Q3 minus Q1. And so that's 110 minus 15. And so that would be 95. And it says, what is the maximum value? And the maximum value is right at the end here. And that is about 240. Now, these data sets did not have any outliers. So outliers would be shown as an asterisk out here, off to the left or right. And what these bars are showing, this bar right here at the far right and at the far left, it's not, for this data set, it is the last or the largest data point. Which, for some reason, this showed up here, I have the data point in 330, but this, I didn't include that one on this digs that you can see that here. But if we were looking at the upper and lower fence, that's what this bar means, is that's the last data point that's inside the upper fence, and this is the last data point that's inside the lower fence. So make sure you're getting some practice making box plots, and catch me back for lesson 2.5.